Developing an integrated marketing communication plan will be one of the most exciting things you're going to do in your life someday. For a brand that you work for, a launch of a new brand, to give life to a brand that is suffering, a product launch, possibly a launch of a store for your company. In my case, launching new businesses. Exciting. So understanding the frameworks involved in coming up with a extremely structured step by step process will really help you in your thinking. Sometimes in real life, you might have to act in different ways at different times because a lot of unplanned things happen. But having a structured plan to communicate and an idea of how you're going to integrate rather than doing disconnected, disjointed activity is going to really help. So for this, you will look at Chris Phil on the MCPF planning process. You will look at Pelsmacker's communication planning process, other tools. So familiarize yourself with your planning process for campaigns. Now, start of this task is very clear. The examiner wants you to set two clear communication objectives, not marketing objectives, not business objectives, but communication objectives. So read the subject of objectives carefully so you can select a right communication objectives. And there onwards, you will have to go through a set of activity that you're going to do that's going to help you achieve those objectives. So whatever you say beyond your objectives, if they are not connected to the set objective, that's a disjointed plan. So keep remembering to connect everything to the objectives that you set. Now, some of the content that's going to come for this task will be from the work you've done in task 1B, C, 2A, 2B, and 2C. So remember to refer those points and bring them rather than repeating the content that you already communicated. Remember, in the brief you did earlier, a significant amount of information with regard to target audience, even your communication goals, you already communicated that. So keep referring them and build on them. Remember this very, very carefully. So, step one in your communication plan assignment is to quickly establish the importance of integrated communication planning. In other words, take a couple of authors who has highlighted the need for integration of communication and the need for planning, and the models that are available for you to choose, and then select the model that you plan to use for this assignment. In this case, it could be Pelsmacker's process of integrated communication planning or Phil's MCPF. So step one, in fact your heading one, is communication objectives. Now here you can write a couple of lines that establishes the need for clear communication objectives that are smart, and what factors that you are considering in setting these objectives. In other words, you might briefly bring the context that this company is currently operating in. So example, if you take Keells, they are in a context of going through a rebrand of their symbolism and their communication, the red to green and the whole topic of being fresh. So that's like your context. Don't waste too much of time on it. Quickly set objective 1, objective 2. So a communication objective for Keells could be a positioning objective, where Keells is going to position their brand in the space of being fresh and sustainable. Now, fresh is, in their view, on the fruits and vegetables that they have on the stove, and sustainable is about their commitment to recycling, reducing, reusing the plastics that are involved in buying what you buy in a supermarket. But remember, this objective has to relate to customer engagement, to improve customer engagement. So you got to write your objective with that in mind. So, example of an objective specifically in that line could be to increase your customer engagement in the fresh fruits and vegetable category with integration of your employees as a set of advocates to be achieved over a particular period of time at the store activation. So what I'm doing there is I'm carefully thinking through how to be specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, time bound, smart. The objective is trying to tick the boxes on achieving a communication requirement, improving customer engagement, and I've also added a bit of employee because that was the way we structured this assignment from task 1. So think of a clear, detailed, smart objective. And then beyond that objective, justify that objective. Why that is relevant. What's the requirement for that object to be currently a priority. You might even indicate the previous objectives that were similar in your company. So you justify the objective, you discuss the objective after you set that objective underneath that. Similarly, set 2 such objectives. That's an important part. Remember, wrong objectives lead you to the wrong destination. Spend time to beautifully set your objectives for this plan. It's from there that you go about the rest of the steps that you need. So example, your message strategy. What type of communication message that you are recommending for your company. So once again, you can refer your creative brief where you highlighted the need for either a rational message or an emotional message. So bring that out and bring possible messages. So if you are recommending a combination of rational and emotional, what percentage of rational communication will you do, what percentage of emotional, you can indicate that. And you can give examples of possible messages. So for example, today Keells is talking about being responsible in the way you use your plastics in the supermarket. So what's the message that you're going to send? We saw Arpico talking about silly natua, which means silly bags to be discarded. So what type of messages that you could bring into the table? You could bring couple of options. You could benchmark what another company has done, and you could recommend a similar rational or emotional message to be involved. We've talked about the Cargills message of Gedara Gamang or on your way home, which is on the subject of convenience becoming a fairly boring, almost irrelevant message. So you can indicate the current message and you could recommend the futuristic message for this company. The audit of Cargill shows that Cargill's strength is their heritage and their national presence. Can you bring a message in that line? So there onwards, you will support that objective, the message, through a set of communication strategies. The methods of communication, the media, and the tools they are going to use. Again, remember to link those to the objectives. Even a little table that shows which methods, media, tools will support which objective, and then discussing it underneath can even give a good structure. So for an example, for Cargills to bring back their heritage and their deep-rooted relationships to the farmer community. That message, if they're going to bring that, what methods and tools are they going to use? So let's take advertising. So if advertising is a method they're going to use, what type of media are they going to use? Are they going to go TV, radio, press in a traditional route? And what are they going to do there? What are they going to do with digital? Is this going to be a YouTube strategy, or is this going to be an Instagram strategy? Now, Instagram is a bad strategy for Cargills because the typical shopper island-wide in Cargills is not an Instagram profile. So justify your recommendation based on your target audience that you already explained in your creative brief. And then of course, look at the specific tools that you're going to use. Here also you could benchmark what example Tesco's done or Sainsbury's done and recommend a similar communication strategy, method, tactic to use. Be extremely specific. You could give a screenshot from what you've done before and propose what you're planning to do with a screenshot from a benchmark company and then explaining it. So 3 to 4 strong communication strategies are going to be extremely important. Don't forget to put the heading on integration. How do you plan to integrate some of the communication methods, media and tools you already recommended above? Remember, on task 2 you talked about integration of digital and traditional. So please show how you are going to integrate digital and traditional. What you do in the store, how do you take it to your social media, YouTube? What's on the billboard, how do you bring it to the store? How would your email campaign will be moved to a couponing store experience? So bring in the benchmarks that you've done earlier and show how you will integrate your communication strategy that you've already given above. So the next part is integrated communication strategy, a plan that includes multiple activity. You're doing things at the store, you're doing things with your employees to engage them. Then you are launching new microsites on your website to support this fresh campaign. So many things are happening. So the final part of this portion of your plan is to do a detailed Gantt chart, an implementation schedule. What are you going to do? The activities on week 1, week 2, week 3, month 1, month 2, 3 to 6 months plan has to be detailed out. We call it a Gantt chart. Be very specific. If it requires to brief an agency, if it requires to have an internal campaign, which is very important, don't forget the need for an internal campaign to drive your external activation. If you are planning to launch a customer relationship management system, especially like a nexus in Cargills to engage, list them down with specific. The duration you are going to take for some of those projects. Which week will you do the planning? Which week will you finalize a supplier or a vendor? Which week will you launch it internally? Which week or month you're going to launch it externally? This has to be a detailed Gantt chart, an implementation schedule. Take your time to get this right, and it has to make sense. You can't launch an integrated campaign unless you update your web on your new message, because your current web has the old message. So there has to be a sequence so it makes practical sense. Think of that very carefully. Now the final part of this task 3 is always about how do you measure, how do you monitor whether what you plan is going to work. So you need to discuss the need for measuring. So bring in the theory where the authors talk about the need to measure or control your communications and the types of tools that are available. There are research tools, there are feedback tools. Example, your focus groups. Examples, your customer surveys. Example, your employee surveys. Do not forget, our employees supporting this external campaign. So what aspects are you going to use generally to see whether this campaign is on track? There onwards, each of the tools you use, say TV advertising, PR, for example, your social media on Facebook, each of those, what metrics will you use to see that you're on track? All of these are available in your textbooks, example Pulsemaker or Chris Phil. So example, on your Facebook launch campaign, are you going to measure customer engagement, impressions, the reach? Very important. On your television, again, how much of GRPs are you achieving? Are you getting an attitude shift in people about using plastic that you surely might be able to do through a survey or even a focus group study? So understand the types of measurement tools that you need to use, and each activity see whether you are using the right tools. Now, that will establish an excellent measuring dashboard for your integrated communication plan. But remember, the heart of this plan is to achieve customer engagement. So if you have basic level shoppers who are switching from Cargills to Keells or for laughs, how do you get them up the loyalty ladder? How do you get them up the engagement ladder digitally? So you got to build that in. You got to use the right terminology from a simple prospect to taking your customer up to an advocate. From a lurker online, how do you create an engaged rating, a customer who writes reviews for you, gives you ideas on your business? How do you achieve that? So bring in that thought all along this task of your integrated communication plan.